Welcome to Music Gear Talk. Discover the tech that inspires the pros and powers today's music industry.
That was awesome, man. That was awesome, dude. That was a fun jam. We just came up with that, folks. This is Music Gear Talk. My name is Florentino Buenaventura, and we are in Videoland today. So welcome here. We are at the awesome Intertalk Media. I almost said movie studios, but Intertalk Media Studios. Got a collection of some of the great albums. We love vinyl around here. And we love basses. Of course, I'm a bass player, and we're doing that. And I'm here with a good friend, a fellow bass player, as well as an inventor and company owner. We are here with Cliff Latshaw. Say hello, Cliff, to everybody.
Hello. How's everybody doing?
So Cliff came out from Las Vegas for this. We were going to do a phone call, right?
Yeah.
And then you're here in studio with us, and I thought that was pretty awesome that you did that. So,
well, fellow bass player, I'll go out of my way for a fellow bass player.
And you know what? Hey, that's how we do it, man. I don't know about these guitar players like these guys over here. So, let's kind of jump into it, man.
All right.
You came up with a company called Newbasstone, Inc. Well, actually, it was My Newbasstone, Inc. at some point.
I want a new bass.
There we go. I want a new bass tone.
Yeah.
Hey man, I think all bass players are looking for that extra special something. Sometimes you find it, sometimes you don't. In this particular case with the Nitewalker,
right,
people find that. So let's kind of start off. How did you get into this? What did you do to start creating gear besides creating music?
Well, I started playing in rock bands when I was about 13 years old, and we had a little rock group that we put together and played for a couple of years, and ended up, we made it to I did a sorority formal when I was 15 years old or something like that, and so it was.
So here, I'm going to interrupt you there. Mm-hmm. Did you get girls at the sorority formal? Because it's just famous that bass players just don't get the action, man. Did you get a girl at that?
They were so dressed up, and they all had dates. There was no chasing women at that one. So, but we had a good time and we played nice. And people liked us and everything. But that was. I had an amplifier when I was 13. I went to a pawn shop and bought an old amplifier. I saved up my money. I started working when I was 12. To make pocket money. So I got this, I saved up enough money to buy an amplifier, and I went down to the pawn shop and bought this old amplifier called a bass tone. Bass tone amplifier. Well,
who was the manufacturer of that? I don't remember that.
I don't know. I've never seen another one. That's the only one I had, and I wish I hadn't gotten rid of it when I did.
I know. Don't you hate that when you're younger and all the gear that I remember all the good stuff, my Randall bass head that I first got. So I'm with you on that, man. Yeah. So please continue.
So anyway, I started playing in this group, and we were doing all this, all the stuff that was popular then, hit on the dock of the bay, and Sam and Dave, and we did the Bee Gees, and all kinds of stuff. But anyway, I was getting pretty good on bass for a little kid, we were just going crazy playing every day. We played 4 hours, get down there and practice every day, 4 hours a day and stuff, and in the summertime even more. And so we started getting good and stuff, playing, and then we started getting jobs, and we needed the bass amp was distorting too much when you turn it up to play loud enough with the drums.
Now, was this one a tube amp that you had, or was it a solid state?
It was a tube amp with this is 66 it was.
Wow.
So, it was a tube amp with one 15-inch speaker. It was a combo.
Okay.
And, like I said, you couldn't turn it up very loud. It'd start to distort. Probably half of that was the dirty pots, and I didn't even know to clean the pots back then. But, so the group was going pretty good, and we got a lead guitar player and a rhythm guitar player and a set of drums, and me on the bass. And we got some stuff together. We had 4 hours of material, and so then I went out and bought a bigger amplifier, a brand new amplifier. Saved up my money and went out and bought a brand new amplifier, and it was a National with 2 15s and a piggyback with it was all tubes, and
those were great. Big giant. Was it the big knob one? Did it have the big knobs?
No, I don't remember really.
Okay.
I think it did have big knobs.
Yeah, I remember.
But anyway, it had a copper grill cover, copper colored grill cover, and it was a nice looking amp. But like I said, I took it home. And the tone control on my bass didn't work anymore, and I just bought a brand new Gibson bass, and it just wasn't working. So, I mean, compared to that other one that I got rid of, but it wasn't loud enough, and then I got the new one where it was loud, but it didn't.
As the start of I want a new bass tone, right?
Yeah, I want a new bass tone. I didn't want this National. Yeah.
Yeah, you wanted something that was not what that was.
Right. So that was the beginning of the disappointment, and then I started, like, there was a lady in our neighborhood, and her father owned a Ford dealership or something. She was always getting comp tickets. She'd get a handful of tickets, take us all down to the concerts at the Civic Arena in Pittsburgh. We always get down there and see all the concerts for free, So everybody that came through, we got to see them, The Doors, Led Zeppelin, first time around.
You're making Paul jealous because these are all the bands he wanted to see back in the day.
Three Dog Night, Crosby, Stills and Nash, a bunch of them. But you get down there and you hear the song on the radio and it sounded beautiful, and then you go down there to hear the concert and it was just, even right up next to the stage, the bass was just so distorted and terrible sounding. It was, But I mean, everybody had fun, but it was, the sound wasn't there at that time.
And did you identify at that time that it was in the preamp, or was it in, what were you thinking at that time?
I was thinking it was the speakers. I was thinking, 14, 15.
Okay, so you thought 16. It was the speakers that you had to have.
Yeah, they needed to improve the speakers or something like that. And they've done a lot of improvements on speakers since then. They sure have. But I didn't know anything about electronics. All I knew about, if the cable if the little, if the quarter-inch jack went bad in the guitar, you had to replace that, or the cable went bad, you had to go in and solder it together.
That's pretty much a standard thought process for most people that are getting into the business, that they're looking for other things outside of the preamp world, right?
Right.
Yeah. So when did you jump into? We're going to jump up ahead a little bit. As you were kind of going through this process, you were probably playing with some of the bands there. Did you get into any touring bands or anything of that nature?
No, I actually dropped out of music altogether when I was 17. I just gave up on it. I said, I didn't like my amplifier, and I was unhappy with it.
You hear that, folks? If you don't like your amplifier, it can make you quit. You don't want to do that. Never let go. Never let go.
But a couple years later, I broke back into it, and I started to do it some more and try and put some bands together. But I was just, my heart wasn't in it too much. So, I ended up going to Berklee College of Music.
Oh, okay.
When I was 19, I think it was, and I went for 4 years, and I picked up the cello again, just started playing acoustic cello, and I majored in acoustic cello at Berklee. I wanted to learn jazz, play it like a saxophone, but at that time there was nobody amplified the cello.
No, that was not. You were always traditional.
Yeah, it was always acoustic, and you always had to have 15 cellos or something. But I wanted to play solo cello on jazz, and so I just worked on the cello, and I spent a lot of time learning the Bach suites, the 6 Bach suites.
Yeah.
I just, when I was at Berklee, I spent most of my time in my room playing music. I didn't get out and play much, and I didn't like my bass amp, and I told my teachers there, and they didn't understand me, and the other bass players there, they didn't understand me, and so I just, like I said, I just kept to myself, play my cello, kept my bass chops up, took my lessons every week with the cello and the bass, and I got through Berklee. It was a good experience. And then I got out of Berklee, and my grandmother's brother was he was a vaudeville star. I didn't even know about this. I met him once when I was a little kid, and then he came around when I was out of Berkeley, and he said, you know, look, I had got this booking agent. He booked me back in the 1920s or something like this. You know, I said, well, fine. You know, let me go meet him. So I went down and I talked to him. You know, Sid Markey was his name. So I'd go see Sid Markey every week. I'd go one day a week and get down there. He had a little office in the Clark Building in Pittsburgh, and I get down there and he'd tell me stories and tell me how he's going to set me up. He had made this girl Sandy Mason. He made her a star in the '60s, and she had become a songwriter in Nashville. And she had a partner, and this partner was going to come up here, and if I put a band together, get the best name musicians in Pittsburgh and put them together. And I told him that I had friends in Brazil that I wanted to bring in too, you know.
So it's a whole international thing.
Yeah, it was, you know, it was supposed to be a big time deal, you know. And he said he had relatives in the business that could make it all happen and all this. Of course, Sid was, you know, he was 80 years old or something like that.
Well, if he was in vaudeville,
yeah,
that was pretty much still with Chaplin and all those guys.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But you know, well, my uncle was Joe Bonomo's side man, you know, his top man. My uncle was about this tall, about 5 foot tall, and you know, Bonomo was the world's strongest man and all this. Yeah. So my uncle did these flips and landed on his hand or something like this up in the air. I don't know what he did.
Pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah, but anyway, so I, you know, he said put a band together with the best musicians you can find, and we'll set it up. So I said okay. So I got a 3-piece band together with just some. I got Jack Kaysen was a local Pittsburgh celebrity. He had gone to New York. He played with Adam Miller and Jeremy Steig with Jeremy and the Satyrs. And he was, you know, he was some pretty good, you know, and I mean, he was really good. He was on Devil with the Blue Dress on that record.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was on that when he was on that record when he was 15 years old. And,
you know, it's kind of interesting. I'm going to kind of jump in there. There's a lot of players back then that were super young compared to now. Most of the people that are getting into the business now are in their 20s. I don't think we get as many teenagers, especially as players. You know.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I don't know why that dynamic was. Possibly because it wasn't as easy to get lessons, so you grabbed anybody you can at a young age that knew how to play. Whereas now YouTube, anybody can, you know, jump on YouTube and learn how to play their riffs and stuff like that, or learn their favorite songs. So that's pretty interesting. So want to jump up ahead a little bit here now. You've been playing. You built the band for Joe, or was it Joe?
Sid.
Sid, okay. And you were playing. Did you find your bass tone yet?
No.
No, okay.
No, I was still unhappy with my bass amp, so I had a trainer with 2 big 18s and reflex cabinets. You know, YB3A.
I had a trainer.
It was a 68.
Yeah.
You know, 68 YB3A.
That was the thing to have.
Yeah, this was like 1980.
Yeah. So as you started moving through this process of life, and you know you had this, you know, this dynamic career playing.
Right.
When did you decide, damn it, I got to make my own gear?
Well, I started hanging out in Pittsburgh, just, you know, not doing too much, just hanging out. And I ran into this guy who had a #1 single in the 50s called Dream Girl. He had been in a group that was in this. I don't know if he was on the record or if he started the band, and then when the record came out, he wasn't in the band anymore, but he was. The Dynamics, the name of the group was. It was a local Pittsburgh group. They had a hit, #1 hit in Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Chicago. And it was Billy McWhorter, his name was. But anyway, he was a radio guy in the Army. And so he knew a lot about electronics. And he told me that in 1960, the sound died. He said, the sound died. And then I started telling him about that bass tone amp that I had that I really liked, and how come my amp doesn't sound like this? Well, he says, you know, it was probably the condensers, the capacitors in there. You know, they shrunk everything to make everything smaller right around 1960. He said the capacitors what did it. You know, and I said, well, I thought it was the tubes. You know, they went to transit. He says, no, well, they shrunk everything. So that I was, you know, so I said, well, whatever. You know, I didn't think too much about it, and then I saw down the street from where I lived, they had these church organs sitting on the street waiting for the junk collector to come and take them. So I took my van down there and I said, "You gonna throw those out?" And he says, "Yeah." So I took them in and took them back to my house and stripped them all. And there was a bunch of those big old fat condensers in those church organs.
Okay.
So I just started playing around, and that was the time when ART came out with those 12AX7 preamps.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
remember those?
Yeah.
And I was in this little group that played, and I was singing through one of those guitar processors with the 12AX7 in it.
Oh, okay.
And it fattened the sound up a little bit, but it didn't work for bass. So I said, well, maybe I could make a 12AX7 preamp, that would fatten up my bass sound a little bit. So that's how I figured it out. I mean, that's how I just got started.
So now let's kind of jump into the device here. When did you actually invent the Nitewalker?
Well, it was kind of a long string of inventions. I mean,
there's a whole long name for it, right? Let's go ahead. What's the full name? Because I had to read it too, right?
Yeah, it's a Nitewalker bass guitar tube preamp.
There we go. So when did you invent that?
Well, I can't give you the exact date or anything, but it was in the 90s.
I want to know down to the second, man.
It was in the 90s sometime. I took these, I was experimenting, making a little 12AX7 preamp, and my friend Bill was, he showed me how to, I had, when I was a kid, we had this Bogan PA system. And the only preamp that I ever knew about was in that Bogan PA system because we used to wire around it. If you plugged a mic into the front of the Bogan PA, and then you just touch the volume control, man, you got so much feedback. It was real hard to work with. So what we did was we went around the back and we cut the wires and just wired it in. There were some screws back there that you could.
Those weren't necessarily made for music. They were made for public address, where it came from. You're basically only supposed to speak to a large amount of people. It's more for public speaking. So that's kind of interesting. You guys were using those for music.
So we went around the preamp and just used the tone controls, and that's that's the only preamp that I knew about. So I went and got a schematic for that, and I found one of those at a ham fest or a flea market or something, and I brought it home and stripped it and studied the circuit and everything. And so I built a power supply. Bill was the one that showed me how to get the right, the best power supply design for a tube, because he was familiar with it from the Army, and I just went through it. And
now, Bill is your partner?
Bill McWhorter, he was a singer with the Dynamics.
Okay.
Just somebody I knew, I used to hang out with down there in Homestead, Pennsylvania. So we would, he showed me how to do it, and then I go home and build it. It might take a couple of days, and then so I got it working, with basic electronics, but it didn't do anything. It didn't make it sound any better or any worse. It just, there it was. It worked. It's a 12AX7 preamp. But so I started changing out capacitors. I knew what values they had to be. On the input it was a .047, and then. Now
you were not trained as an electrician or electrical engineer. You basically just almost kind of, not necessarily as a hobbyist, you just out of necessity, you just started playing around to kind of find the sounds that you wanted, right?
Yeah, I was just trying to get my sound. I was trying to find that bass tone sound in a modern solid state amp.
You want to got a new bass tone.
Yeah,
I want a new bass tone. You got a new bass tone.
So and I just started changing things out, and I couldn't get it. It was a couple months, and I'd play it for a couple days like this and a couple days like this. I'm not satisfied with that. It's not good, And then I'd go back and I'd look in that organ and pull out some more capacitors and put them together. And then I figured, well, I needed a .22 for the one position in there's three of those capacitors that you use in there. So I took out two .47s and I ran them in series, and that makes about .235 or something like that if you put them in series. So I put them in series, and as soon as I did that, the bottom end on the bass guitar just came right. I mean, it really boosted it good, and I said, that's what I've been looking for. So for years, that's all I had with it. And then I was working in China, building the U.S. Embassy, and I bought a computer, and I started to get on some forums online and stuff, and talk to people from SCORE. You know who SCORE is?
Yeah, the organization that helps you build small businesses,
Right.
kind of teaches you all the
Right.
back end stuff for business.
Right, and I started asking people through SCORE, you know, how to find these capacitors. Who makes these capacitors? Where can I find some? Well, they said, try Russia. You know, they have some old military surplus capacitors. Try those. So I bought a bunch of those, and then I started playing with those. This was around 2005, 2006, and boy.
So it was just a long process, gestation process to kind of come up with a tone on that.
Right. So that's how I got the top frequency circuit was playing around with those Russian condensers, because I put both sides. Then I started using both sides.
You hear that,
of
Paul? Took Russians to kind of make this happen.
Yeah.
Paul came from Russia.
You hear that, Donald Trump? Russians aren't all bad. Yeah. But anyway, so I put where I had the 2.47s in series. I put a 0.15 up there for a little more high end on the bass, and that opened up the notes above the G string too.
Okay.
So
why don't you? I think you're still plugged in there. Go ahead and play a little bit of that, and then I'll play a little bit, and then we can kind of go through some adjustment.
Okay.
Now this is the high right here.
Yeah.
Add a little bit of saturation to it. I'm gonna roll it back off a little bit now. Now it's mostly string tone. Dress it up a little higher. Let's take it to the extreme. It's almost a little distortion, but not distortion, more just saturation. It's very cool. All right, we're gonna roll it back there. Now I'm gonna do, if you don't mind, I'm gonna do some something funky. I'm gonna do a little.
All right, now I'll show you how it works. It's, you know, like I said, yeah. All right, I just put some overdrive into it. Now we'll take it off. I'm going to roll the high frequency volume down. Kind of went thin on top now. Put it back where it was. I'm going to roll the low frequency down. And you see how it went thin on the bottom now. But you still got tone on top. And I'll roll it back on there. Now you got tone on the bottom and the top. That's how it works.
Very cool. I don't play bass that often anymore, but that was fun. So it adds really some warmth bottom end. So folks, so you know where we're starting from. Pretty much, I have just a touch of high end, a touch of low end. I went to the bridge pickup here to kind of give a little body, and that's what we started off with. We started off with pretty much, you know, just a little bit of the Nitewalker when we started this show off. As we are moving, that's pretty much the tones. The amp that we're running through there, it's all flat, so we're not adding anything, no compression. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that for the folks there, Cliff. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do something crazy, Paul. You might want to mute my my guitar here, because I am going to plug into the amp so they can hear what the original amp sounded like. So kind of bear with us, folks. knowing Paul, he probably got a butt shot for you guys there of me. So I'm going to unplug now. All right. So this is without the Nitewalker. So so now we're going to go back in. I'm going to go ahead and plug that back in. Let's go ahead and adjust it while I'm playing that same track. Very cool. Fattens it up, gives it a little bit more tone, takes it away from being stale, kind of livens it up, gives it a little bit of heart. I love that. Yeah. So that is that new bass tone that you're talking about. Let's kind of go through. There's a couple of different features and things you can do. It's got you've got a biamp system there, and you've got an overdrive. Let's kind of talk about that.
Okay. Well, the biamp, if you wanted to run 2 amps, say you were really trying to tweak your tone or something like that, you could run the highs through one amplifier and the lows through another. Okay. You just switch the switch and it goes to a 2 output system, and you switch it the other way and it goes to a mono 1 output system. And the overdrive, it just overdrives the tube, a couple more volts to the tube, so it makes it a little bit cleaner and a little bit louder. Just very subtle.
Okay, let's try it. Let's try a couple things here.
All right, now I'll add the overdrive. Take the overdrive off.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really digging it. It's super simple, but for those people who want to fatten up their tone, this is definitely a great device. Let's kind of let's get to the chase. How do people get it? What's the price? What are we looking at for this puppy?
Okay, for online, I sell them myself. Direct. If you want one with a tweed cover, then it's $8.99.99. Free shipping, and then if without the tweed, it's $7.99.99.
Okay.
So
okay.
It's just like that, and there's a few stores you get. Westwood Music has them. There's Willie's Vintage Guitar, or Willie's Guitar in Minnesota. I'm not sure it's American Guitars. That's right. Willie's American Guitars. Rockin' Robin in Houston has them. Danny's Music in El Paso. Guitar Garage in Lubbock, Texas. I think they still have one over there. Let's see, who else? Oh yeah, a Guitar Pedal Shop up in Plymouth, Massachusetts just signed on with them. And you can get down to your local music store and tell them you want a Nitewalker, and they can order one from me too. So.
Yeah. We got to we'll talk to our friends over at Pitbull Audio. They're sponsors of the network, the sponsors of this show, and it's just a cool store. And we're going to go ahead and get them connected with you and see what they think and how that can kind of work out for you.
Sounds great.
What's next, man? What do you guys got planned for over at Newbasstone?
Well, I'm trying to figure out a way to keep this going. Next year, everything's going to have to be ROHS compliant in order to be sold in the United States.
I'm sorry, what is ROHS?
That means no lead. They don't contain any lead. So these old.
Why is that? Just curious.
Well, it's it gets in the water system, and if somebody throws one, it gets in a landfill or something. The lead gets in the water systems, and lead is just basically not good for especially young people developing. So they want to rid the
Superman doesn't like lead either. He can't see through it. I don't know.
Right, something, I don't know. But they're trying to get it. They don't want any manufacturers using anything with lead in it anymore. So the capacitors that I use, and no one else makes them at a reasonable price. You can buy these capacitors, new for $40, $80 a piece, and they're made in Denmark, and there's some places down here in Southern California, but it's just too expensive. And all you need is tinfoil and wax paper, basically, with a little mineral oil smeared in there. But I might have to buy a capacitor winder myself and start winding them myself. But I'm trying to find, to get into some accelerator programs, where I can get some money behind me and some help from engineers and so forth to get it to where they could be mass produced.
Yeah. Are you doing it by hand right now, or?
I have somebody building the boxes, and they built the boxes and they made the circuit boards, and I've had to revise them, so I've been doing a whole lot of work on them, taking stuff off the circuit boards, putting stuff on new circuit boards, and there's been a lot of safety regulations that they've been haggling with and adding to the manufacturer's responsibilities and so forth. So I've had to change my design. I had to shut down for a while and figure out a way to make it work with a safety ground on it, which I didn't have before. And so they required me to do that, so I did that. And I hired a safety engineer to go over everything with me on it, make sure there's nothing in there that's not in compliance, So everything's been checked out, and they say everything's good for now until next year, whenever it goes. I'm not allowed to use those capacitors anymore. So right now I'm just in limbo. I'm trying to get rid of the ones that I have, and get them into endorsers' hands, so that people can say, hey, this is something that's really nice. We need this. Can somebody please, change this? Make it possible, because it's just about impossible.
Well, hopefully they come up with a different way of dealing with the whole lead thing and all that fun stuff. And Cliff, we really appreciate you coming down here and working with us on this. Is there any last minute thing that you want to say about the Nitewalker and share to the viewing and listening audience?
Nothing much. No, I just want to thank you very much, Florentino, for having me. It's been, we had a safety engineer, like I said, go through it and look at it, make sure everything's compliant, but I didn't have, it costs thousands and thousands of dollars to get them safety tested and everything. So there's a lot of music stores that won't take them because they haven't been through the UL process, certification or whatever. But still, it's everything's good, and it's good to go in the United States. And, thank you again for having me. And
well, thank you. Cliff, thank you for coming out, man, all the way from Vegas, folks. Newbasstone, or I want a Newbasstone, or in this case, if you get one of these, got my Newbasstone, and the Nitewalker, and the passion that you've had throughout your career, starting off at the tender age of 14, 15 years old on through now, where you're what, 25, 26 now?
I wish I.
You gave it away, man, when you said the 60s, brother, but that's all good. This has been Music Gear Talk, folks. My name is Florentino, and this is on the Intertalk Radio Media /TV network. I threw them all in there. We got a bunch of things coming down the pipeline, so stay tuned for the next thing. And Cliff, you want to play something coming out here?
I might as well.
Let's see if I can. For you, Cappy, another one in the can.